Hello, you are most welcome. I'm Teacher Ivan from Una Educational Services. Today we shall be looking at vectors. However, before we continue, please don't forget to search and subscribe to all our YouTube channels from Una Educational Services. That is Una e-learning platform, Una Kids platform, and Teacher Ivan's online class. Otherwise, hit the notification button such that whenever we post a video, you get notified and we learn together. A vector is a quantity that has both magnitude and direction. Such quantities include force, velocity, displacement, weight, acceleration, momentum, among others. So all these are quantities with the magnitude and the direction. Now, how do you tell and determine whether a given quantity is vector or not? A vector quantity is represented using a straight line with an arrow in it, where the length of the straight line represents the magnitude of the vector, and the arrow on it represents the direction. That is how you can tell and determine a vector quantity. So, if you have a line without an arrow, it is not vector, because it is the arrow that shows the direction of such a quantity, and therefore without that arrow it will cease to be a vector quantity. After that, let us also look at how we can classify vectors. Let's look at how we can categorize or classify vectors. Vectors can be classified into column vectors, displacement vectors, and position vectors, where column vectors are written in the form of x, y, in the column form, where the x coordinate comes first on top and the y coordinate comes second at the bottom. So when we write a vector in such a form, it is known as a vector quantity. A column vector. We also have displacement vectors that represent motion with respect to a fixed point. We have position vectors that can be represented by column vectors, i.e., if I have vector OP, this can be written in a column vector, which is A, B. A coming first on the top, B following, next at the bottom. And they are displacement vectors from the origin to a certain point in the XY planes. Those are positioning vectors. So Those are the categories of how we can classify vectors: column vectors, displacement, and position vectors. After getting a brief introduction to vectors, let us look at how we add and subtract vectors. So this is addition and subtraction of vectors. However, we have principles or rules that guide us in working out operations on vectors. For addition and subtraction of vectors, we can add or subtract corresponding components of the involved vectors. That is to say, I have example here which says, given that vector A is 2, -3, B is 0, 5, C is -3, 4, then they want me to find A plus B plus C. So, for me to get A plus B plus C, I will add the corresponding column vectors of A, B, and C. That is, for vector A, it is 2, -3, plus that of B, which is 0, 5, plus that of C, which is -3, 4. And I'm given the guideline, which says if I'm to add vectors, I'll add corresponding components. Meaning, at the top, we have the x values. So I'll consider the rows. I have 2 rows. I'll add all the components at the top of each column vector. That is, I'll add 2 plus 0 plus -3. I'll also do the same for my second row. That is -3 plus 5 plus 4, which gives me 2 plus 0 is 2, plus -3 is -1. Then -3 plus 5 is 2, plus 4 is 6. So when I add the 3, I get -1, 6. But how do I add? I consider 2 rows, the x values and the y values. Then I have another problem to solve, that is A minus B plus C. Similarly, I will substitute these with their corresponding column vectors. That is, for A, I'll replace it with 2, -3. For B, I write 0, 5. And for C, I write -3, 4. After that, I deal with the corresponding components of these vectors. That is, I will add the x values, those that are at the top. That is to say, 2 minus 0 plus -3. Then -3 minus 5 plus 4, which gives me 2 minus 0, 2, plus -3 gives me -1. -3 minus 5 is -8. plus 4 is negative 4. So this will be my final value, or my final column vector. So when adding or subtracting vectors, we do this considering corresponding components of the involved vectors. That is, we shall add or subtract the upper components and the lower components according to the vectors involved. Otherwise, that has been our first lesson of vectors. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button such that whenever we have a video, you get notified and we learn together and conveniently. Thank you. Meet you next time.